Real shit, huh?
The underground heart, the largest and most protected bunker of the regime in Tehran, was hit and destroyed. B-2 bombers were used in the operation. And while Iran reduces its attacks to almost isolated shots, Israel is striking Hezbollah hard, which a few days ago opened the other war front from the north of the country, from Lebanon. Greetings, I'm Ari from Israel, and let's get straight to it. The update for this 7th day of war. Because what's happening is no longer just a sequence of attacks. What we're seeing now is a progressive dismantling of the key capabilities of the Iranian regime. Meanwhile, at the same time, regional pressure is widening and the war is no longer felt as a single line of fire, but is turning into several fronts at the same time. The news today is of enormous significance. The Israeli Defense Forces attacked the military bunker of Ali Khamenei right in the heart of Tehran, a complex that was not just any facility, but one of the most important command centers of the Iranian leadership. This bunker was located beneath the regime's leadership complex and extended across several entire streets. It had multiple entrances, meeting rooms, a sophisticated war room, media rooms. And it was built over the years as a secure center used for emergency events, from which the regime's leadership could continue operating in the midst of a war. And we're not just talking about concrete underground, we're talking about the command and control backbone of the regime. That's why this strike is not symbolic but operational. About 50 Israeli fighter jets took part in the attack, guided by precise intelligence. According to IDF reports, the late Khamenei was eliminated before he could use this center during the operation. In other words, if he hadn't been eliminated during the first day, it was most likely that he would have gone to take refuge in this bunker. But even after the first day and after Khamenei was eliminated, the complex continued to be used by high-ranking Iranian officials. Up until the moment of the attack, according to reports, several high-ranking officials of the regime were at the site, inside the bunker, right at the time of the bombing. And the IDF is still waiting for an official confirmation about the high-ranking officials who might have been eliminated in the attack. If this is confirmed in its entirety, we wouldn't just be talking about an attack on infrastructure, but another direct blow to the regime's actual ability to coordinate military decisions in the midst of this entire conflict. And when a regime starts losing its command centers, its most protected shelters, and its leadership figures, the problem is no longer just military. It starts to become structural. Meanwhile, very harsh testimonies keep coming in from Tehran. The BBC quoted residents who managed to get online and described last night as hell on earth, calling it the most intense and severe night of the war so far. At least in the Iranian capital, with explosions throughout the night and people who couldn't sleep until dawn. Meanwhile, the joint forces of the United States and Israel were bombing military targets in the capital and, of course, in its surroundings. Added to that is an evacuation order in the city of Qom by the IDF so that civilians can leave the upcoming military targets. There are also reports being shared about significant eliminations inside Iran, and here we have to be very responsible. When something hasn't been confirmed yet, you say it exactly as it is, so as not to create false expectations or give false information. But the mere fact that these kinds of reports are already starting to circulate shows the level of internal upheaval that the regime structure is experiencing. Remember that in the previous video I also shared with you what was happening with Khamenei's son, who had supposedly died. The first day of the attack, Saturday, Wednesday. In the afternoon, reports circulated that he might be alive, and then at night it was already said that he had been eliminated. It's unclear if it was the first or second time. The information from Iran is completely out of control right now. On the other hand, the conflict continues to directly and very seriously affect other actors in the region. Qatar condemned an Iranian attack on several buildings in Bahrain where there was Qatari Navy personnel present, integrated within a joint naval command of the states of the Gulf Cooperation Council. That is to say, it is no longer just defined by missiles flying toward Israel or by retaliatory attacks inside Iran. Since the early days of the conflict, Iran began attacking infrastructure and personnel of allied Arab countries throughout the Gulf. And that changes the playing field because it increases the number of governments that may no longer feel like observers, but rather aggressors. At the same time, it was reported that Netanyahu led a new security consultation last night. Expansion is expected if the conflict continues. And actually all over the Gulf. This detail may seem minor, but it isn't, and it makes it serious. Conflict. It continues. Conflict. The conflict. Evacuation plans are starting to be put in motion, which reflects the level of regional risk that is being taken very seriously, even outside of Israel. And the truth is, with the way things are today, it's much safer for an Israeli to be in Israel than in any country in the Gulf. Understanding that the military capabilities, and especially the defense capabilities that the Gulf countries have, don't come close to what Israel has in terms of infrastructure, which obviously puts people's safety at risk, not just for Israelis, but for everyone living in these countries. It is also reported that Iran has attacked data centers linked to Microsoft in the Gulf, targeting critical digital infrastructure associated with cloud services used by governments and major institutions. This would mark a much deeper escalation against technological and data infrastructure in the region. To put it more simply, it would no longer be just a war of missiles, drones, and bases, but also a war against the digital backbone that supports everything: state servers, communications, and highly sensitive operations for all these countries. But before I dive in, I want to share with you the story of this vial, which amazed me, and I think you should know about too. This vial holds an unbelievable story that was unheard until now. Inside is earth from the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, rescued by archaeologists after thousands of years of history were dumped as rubble. It is our opportunity to prevent history from disappearing. Start the new year with a personal connection to Jerusalem. Click the link in bio or scan the code to enjoy a special offer. U.S. officials told CBS News that 3 U.S. Air Force MQ-9 Reaper drones have already been shot down during Operation Epic Fury. It's not clear exactly where all of them went down, but one had tried to crash off the Iranian coast, and another may have been shot down by friendly fire from Qatar. That might sound strange, but remember we already have the precedent of the incident that happened this week, where air defense batteries from the United Arab Emirates shot down at least 3 U.S. aircraft. Are we talking about a shoot-down by friendly fire? This also shows us something important. Even on the Western side, the war is causing friction, confusion, and attrition. Because it's one thing to have technological superiority, and quite another to operate without mistakes. In a war that is expanding by land, air, sea, and now also through digital infrastructure. And if we talk about direct military pressure, in the last hour, the American bombers, the famous B-2S, dropped dozens of 2,000-pound bunker-buster bombs against ballistic missile launchers deeply buried in the mountains of Israel. That means the priority is not just to intercept what is launched, but to destroy what is still hidden before it can be used. And this logic connects with another very important point. The secret Minzadai facility in the northeast of Tehran, which, according to the report, was destroyed 2 days ago, would not be linked to uranium enrichment, as was initially reported in some media, but rather to the weaponization phase of the Iranian nuclear program. In other words, it would not be the place where the material is produced, but where that material is turned into an actual bomb. And this is very important for us to understand clearly. A military nuclear program usually has several stages. One is enriching uranium, another is preparing the core, and the last is designing the bomb, the detonation system, and its integration. In what has been shared so far, Minzadai would be linked precisely to that third stage. Weapon components, advanced detonation systems, and possible integration of a warhead into ballistic missiles. In simple terms, it would not be a facility to make material, but to turn that material into a usable weapon. That's why, by confirming the destruction of this center, the message is huge. The strike is not only against the ability to threaten, but also against the ability to materialize a strategic threat of another level. Subscribe. And in parallel to all this, the Israeli Air Force destroyed 6 Iranian ballistic missile launchers minutes before they were used against Israeli territory, while they were getting ready to fire. In addition, 3 advanced Iranian defense systems were also destroyed. And we have to keep in mind that each launcher destroyed not only prevents an immediate attack, but also reduces the possibility of future attacks. Because a missile without a launch platform ends up being almost an immobile piece, stored in a tunnel, simply waiting to be destroyed. Alright, since we're here, let me take a brief pause and then we'll continue. If you value this kind of update, then subscribe to this channel, hit the like button and the thumbs up, that's what it means. And if you want to take it a step further, remember that memberships are available that give you access to the private news group on WhatsApp. You just have to tap the button below that says join, that's it. And here in this WhatsApp group, what we do is share information, videos, and images throughout the day, covering what's currently happening here in Israel and in the region. Alright, let's continue now. Another symbolic and military strike came from the sea. The United States Central Command released images of U.S. forces eliminating what was known as the Iranian unmanned aircraft carrier. It wasn't very big, about the size of a World War II aircraft carrier. And just a year ago, the Iranians were showing off this ship, adapted from a commercial vessel, as a major upgrade for deterrence in distant waters, to cover all of Iran's coasts. Today, that so-called crown jewel ends up as another destroyed trophy. In the middle of a military campaign, that of the U.S. forces. The U.S. forces have already destroyed 30 Iranian vessels, which is about 25% of the regime's fleet. The reality is that when a country loses naval assets of this kind in the middle of a confrontation, it not only loses military strength, but also loses narrative, propaganda, and the ability to project power. Meanwhile, on the northern front, Hezbollah continues to raise tensions. The Israeli Defense Minister Katz stated at the end of a situation assessment that no resident of the north should leave their land or their communities, and he stated that the mission is to guarantee their safety, taking into account that in the war against Hezbollah last time, a year and a half ago, and in the war that also extended with Hamas, what happened was that the population of the entire north of Israel, the closest to the border with Lebanon, was completely evacuated, and their houses were empty for months. When they returned, they found all the drama of what had happened during the war. Well, the promise of the IDF right now is that it will not allow this to happen again, and that it will not allow there to be displaced people and displacements of citizens from the northern part of Israel again, adding that the IDF has reinforced its forces inside enemy territory and has expanded to additional points that it has already taken. This totally changes the situation. And those are strong words, because it shows that the official message is not one of passive containment, but of presence and operational expansion. This is what was expected a few days ago, and that is that the IDF has begun a deployment. Deployment of the armies along the entire northern border with Lebanon with the aim of creating a containment wall to try to push Hezbollah's ground units toward the center of Lebanon. Added to this is a new evacuation warning for 4 additional villages in the Bekaa Valley. This is in southern Lebanon, where the presence of the IDF is beginning to consolidate. And according to an official from the UN Refugee Agency, there are already approximately 96,000 people in collective shelters within Lebanon. That also needs to be said clearly. This war is not only hitting military capabilities, it is also displacing people and disrupting the daily lives of civilians, of thousands of civilians, not only from Israel, but from Lebanon itself. Now that Hezbollah has decided to enter the war, and well, what can we say about all the Gulf countries? Israel, for its part, has already carried out 26 waves of attacks in Dahiyeh in Lebanon since the beginning of the campaign. During the night, headquarters and 10 buildings in Beirut were attacked, which reportedly housed Hezbollah's military infrastructure. Among the targets hit were the headquarters of the Executive Council and a warehouse where drones used in attacks against Dahiyeh were stored. which is the southern suburb of Beirut, and for years has been one of the organization's most emblematic strongholds, once again stands as a symbol of a campaign that is not limited to responding to attacks, but seeks to dismantle the entire structure from within the terrorist group Hezbollah. Alright, and now we move here, to Israel. Although the volume of Iranian fire has progressively decreased, the danger is still completely real. Today it was documented that a fragment from an Iranian launch fell near a school in Givatim. Last night, other fragments from interceptions fell in different towns in northern Israel, including the city of Tiberias. That, by itself, brings us back to the harshest reality, even if it's just a single missile. Even though the barrage is no longer as large as it was in the early days, each alert is still serious. Each siren still affects millions, and every impact or fragment can end up destroying a home, a road, or a school. This is where one of the most revealing facts of this seventh day emerges. Iran is no longer showing the large missile salvos from the beginning, even publishing the launch of the legendary Iranian missile, the Khorramshahr 4. It's no longer these waves with dozens of missiles, but just a single missile. But in the end, it still disrupts everything. It still forces people to run to shelters. It still creates the feeling that the country is under constant fire. And above all, by waves of multiple missiles at once, when in reality there are very few now. In real terms, the number of missiles and drones approaching Israel is dropping very significantly day by day. The reason is that the Iranian arsenals are being depleted quickly and their launchers are being destroyed one by one. And without those launcher trucks, the stored missiles end up being little more than targets, just waiting their turn, as I said before. Since the war began last Saturday at 8 in the morning, Israel has faced 143 waves of Iranian attacks, including missiles and drones. The breakdown is very revealing. Pay attention. 25 waves on the first day, 64 on the second day, 25 on the third day, 9 on the fourth, 11 on the fifth, 11 yesterday, which was the sixth day, and today there have been about 4 waves so far. And this is only counting Iran, because at the same time, well, Hezbollah has already started firing from Lebanon as well, opening this other front in the north. So when you look at the whole sequence, you see a very sharp drop in the intensity of Iranian fire, even though the conflict is obviously spreading in other parts of the region. The question then is no longer just when can Iran fire, but how long can it sustain a war? When every day it loses more capacity to launch effectively. And I want to close with this reflection. What Israel is experiencing right now is not just a miracle. Understanding that we are talking about Israel being a very small country with barely 9.5 million people, and that it is surrounded on all its borders by great enemies who seek its destruction. It is clear that for many, this in itself constitutes not only a miracle, but the intervention of divine providence. However, this does not take away from the preparation, discipline, and commitment of Israeli society. The early warnings, the shelters, the obedience of the population, and the important interceptions being carried out by the IDF are clearly preventing a daily catastrophe. If people did not obey, if the system were not working at this level as it is working today, well, then we wouldn't be talking about contained damage, but about thousands of deaths in less than a week. Sometimes people see a siren, run to the shelter, come out 20 minutes later and feel like nothing happened. But precisely because everyone did what they had to do, something much worse didn't happen. And that difference, in a war like this, well, it simply means lives. Alright, so we'll have to be very attentive in the coming days, especially to 3 things if they end up confirming the eliminations among them. Iran, if Hezbollah escalates even more from the north, and if the reduction of Iranian fire holds, or if they try to reverse it with some high-impact strike or start using powerful missiles. Thank you for joining me for another day. Leave your comment, subscribe to the channel, and don't leave without giving a like. Shabbat Shalom.